Hi, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of Real Talk. I am so excited about this episode because it's all about leveraging your talents. So it really applies to anybody in any industry. Because before you can choose a job or an entrepreneurial endeavor, you really have to know what your talents are and then how to leverage them to be the best business person or entrepreneur that you can be. I'm Caroll Dweck, and my co-host is Avi Saraway, who's unbelievable. Avi.
Hi guys, how are you?
And this event is brought to you by SPH Careers and Exceed, and also the UJA Rise, which is a foundation that helps women empowerment. So it happens to be that our two panelists are women. They don't have to be women, but they are amazing powerhouses that know how to leverage their talents, and we're so excited to have them on. So it is my pleasure to introduce you guys to Adina, Kamkachi, and Shelly Sasson. We're going to tell you first a little bit about the day-to-day, what they do, how they got there, and then they're going to give you all the tips and tricks to figure out what your talents are and how to leverage them in whatever industry you want to get into. So I guess we'll start with Adina. If you want to tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and what your day-to-day is like.
So my full name is Adina Kamkachi, and I am the founder of Adina's Jewels. I am also the designer of Adina's Jewels. And basically what I really do within the company, starting just a day-to-day, I'm involved in pretty much every aspect of the business. I'll start, in early morning, start off with every department, and then basically just, anything that needs my immediate attention, I'll right away be involved in that. But then pretty much after that, I'll be involved with anything like inventory, go on the back end of the site and just start working on that, clearing things up, putting stuff to sale. Really just depends on what's going on during that time. I have a calendar that I go according to. I work with my social media people. So I'm just always in constant contact with my team, and then people that are outside my team, like the figures that we work with or people that we are in constant communication with. So it's just it's something that I'm always doing. I'm always in communication with other people. It's a very people person job, and I'm always required to be in touch with people and to talk to people and to just be around people constantly. I never have a day just to myself. So it is a little bit hard sometimes, but it is great. And I'm always in the office, so you'll always find me here. And then that's pretty much what it is. And then after that, when I have time to be alone, I'll design, I'll work late nights, sketching things up and working with factories, vendors, and all of that going into the night when they start to wake up abroad. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's not a lot, really. I don't know. Sounds like kind of boring stuff.
Yeah, a little boring, nothing crazy, just very mundane. But yeah, that's it, really.
No, that's awesome.
What does your day-to-day look like? So take us through a day in your life.
My day-to-day. If I walk into the office, the minute I walk in, most of my employees are already here, and I always come in once I know that they're already settled in and have already done everything, because I usually leave the office really, really late. And so I'll make sure that once they come in, there's already everything set and ready for them when I leave. And so they'll already start getting started on everything. When I come in, they already have questions for me, how to do this, what should I do here? And I like to always sit down with every department, like the managers of every department, see what's going on, see if there's anything that needs my immediate attention. And then moving on from there, I'll go onto the back end of the site, start doing inventory. I'll start looking through what needs to be changed up, if there's anything that I don't like, anything that I want to add. And then I'll go, through with the photographer, see any new products that are going up. I'll work on pricing and all of that. And then after that, I'll have a little more free time. Sometimes I'll do film. So a lot of times I'm filming or pre-recording videos, just like you guys know that I did for SBH and Exceed. So I'm constantly doing that. I'm working on IGTVs and videos and teaching my followers and consumers on how to stack or how to buy or how to wear their jewelry. So it's basically an all-in-one package when they shop at Edina's and when they follow us on Instagram. So they're getting to know us and getting to know me as the face of the brand. So I always have to be out there and show them who I am. So there's the two-part sector of me hustling and working and doing all of that, and then the filming, the videoing, showing my life and showing who I am personally. And then towards the end of the day, I'm usually rebuying, working with vendors, working with factories, getting in touch with all my people abroad. But, you know, I'm always on the clock, and my employees know that they can always get in touch with me, and I'm always in touch with everyone throughout the entire day. I don't have much of a life, but, you know, I try my best on the weekends. So that's really it.
Sounds like a packed day.
Pretty
Truly.
packed. It's pretty packed, but I mean, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. I really love it. And on days when I take off, I feel very lost. So.
Is that your office, Adina?
Yeah, this is my personal office.
Good place to be for most of the day. It looks like a nice office.
It has to be, because I'm stuck here all the time.
We should do an office tour one of these days.
I'm working on it. I'm working on an office tour. I got to make it a little prettier, and then I'll work on it.
Great. So I also want to introduce Shelly Sasson, who is the product marketing and strategy manager at Flatiron Health. So Shelly, give us the intro.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So like AB said, I am a product marketing and strategy manager at a company called Flatiron Health. It's a healthcare technology company. I've been at Flatiron for almost 2 years now. And prior to that, I was a strategy consultant at IBM out of college. Before I go into kind of the day-to-day of my role, I think it might be helpful to give kind of a brief description of what Flatiron does. So Flatiron's mission is to accelerate cancer research. And the way that we do that is we leverage all the data that's out there on cancer patients. And that kind of lives in something called an electronic health record. So that's the software that you might see your doctor kind of like typing into when you go for a visit. So Flatiron owns our own product for oncologists, and we basically sell that software and then leverage that data for pharma or research purposes in cancer. So it's my responsibility to make sure that we sell that product to as many oncologists as possible, so we have the most data, and to make sure that they're kind of, you know, satisfied on the product so that we don't lose that data or they don't want to, you know, switch to one of our competitors. In terms of the day-to-day of my role, it's kind of hard to explain in a sentence or two, but I think the best way to explain it is kind of in 3 buckets. So the first thing that I do is really around driving business strategy and product strategy. And so that's a lot of market research, competitive intel, customer feedback analysis. So I'm constantly talking to our customers and seeing how they feel about our products and about the market. The second bucket is around sales enablement and marketing campaigns. So enabling the sales team at Flatiron to sell our products. And I do that by running trainings, giving them the collateral they need to kind of articulate the benefits of our products or services, and not just like a ton of meetings. So if you look at my calendar, it's always back to back. And then the last bucket is around customer retention. So I'll run events or webinars, promote new features, things that are gonna make sure that, you know, our customers are happy. So there's kind of a lot of variety with the role, but that's something I really love, and it's the reason why I really love my role and my job at Flatiron, and I find that the mission is something that really resonates with me. So yeah, I hope that kind of explains the day-to-day in the best way I can.
No, it's very interesting. I think you made something that's like so abstract seems so relatable in terms of like what cancer research is and how it relates to us being at the doctor, and then also like the different things that you do. And I'm actually curious to know how you ended up there, because you said you started out consulting at IBM, and it sort of seems like, and maybe it's not so different, but going from consulting to like marketing and strategy, how was that and how that happened?
Yeah, it's a good question. It definitely is different, and I didn't know anything about marketing when I moved to Flatiron or about healthcare, which is a very sometimes complex world to understand. I'm sure you all know, even trying to navigate it yourselves.
Before you go on though, I just want to point that out, because you said that so casually, but like you did not know anything about marketing and you did not know anything about healthcare, and yet you're still able to be very successful at your job. And I think that's an amazing lesson for people to hear, is that you don't need to be specifically trained or knowledgeable in a specific field to still be good at your job. And I guess you'll explain to us how you were able to do that.
Yes, 100%. I think you really want to focus on building skills that are translatable across careers, right? So even though I wasn't in marketing. Like I said, I was in consulting. I was able to articulate, what I learned in consulting and even what I learned back in college, which I know, we might touch on, to how that might be relevant in a marketing role. So going back to your question around what made me make that switch or how I was able to make that switch, I had actually intended to be at IBM for at least 2 years when I left college. That's kind of the typical consulting path, is you work in a role for 2 years, you hope to get promoted, and you kind of go from there with your exit opportunities. And I had an amazing experience going into IBM. My first, I would say, like 6 months to a year. I was working on C-suite level projects at the company. I was an internal strategist, so I got really good exposure right out of college. And then when I kind of hit almost the year mark, things started to become, a bit more stagnant for me. There was a lot of negative pressure on the business and on the group I was in. I actually switched positions at IBM to see if I can kind of grow in a new area of the business. And even though I had switched to that position and I was project managing people who at times were twice my age, I said to myself, I'm not growing in the area that I want to be growing in. I don't want to be doing project management. I learned what I needed to know from IBM, and I realized that I wasn't going to get the skills or the experience that I wanted. And so I said, let me just explore. I didn't know what industry I wanted to be in, what job I wanted to do. I had zero clue, which was a little stressful. And especially with only, a year of experience on your resume, companies, typically don't want to hire you with only a year of experience. So what I did was I just spoke to as many people as I could. I made a spreadsheet with a list of people in my network, friends, people from college, LinkedIn, listed the companies they worked at, and made calls and emailed and met with everyone. And that's ultimately how I found Flatiron, actually through someone who was on an SVH panel with me a year prior to that. And yeah, I went from there. I applied to a role that I didn't get at Flatiron, which I thought was more in line with internal consulting. It was an internal strategy role there. And the timing didn't work out. And they said to me, oh, we have this product marketing role. Does this look interesting to you? And I applied to it. I got it. I actually got another role at a different company that was also more in line with internal consulting, and I would have worked for an executive at that company. But I said, I'm ready to try something new, and I'm ready to dive into something different.
Nice.
You really went go with the flow. You took it day by day with that. You basically found yourself in Flatiron by accident, it sounds like. Yeah,
really happenstance. And I think my advice to people is just, before you jump into saying, this is the industry I want to be in, or this is the career I want to do, speak to as many people as possible and ask them, how they did it, and ask them, what their experience has been, because that will give you the most information to figure out what might be your next move.
Right. So
and a lot of people do that spreadsheet thing. I think it's very smart to just map it out, especially if you're a visual type person or you want to be organized, to say who are the different people that I know in my network, who can I reach out to, what companies do they work in. And I think that people underestimate the amount of times it feels very happenstance that they found their job, but I do think that's very common. There are some people who say, I want to be an internal strategy consultant, and then they follow that for the rest of their lives, but most people don't. So I think it's really relatable what you're saying.
Yeah, another thing actually to add on to what Shelly said about reaching out to people and talking to people and hearing what they have to say. If I ever give anyone advice, it's always to just ask questions and talk to people. And it really never hurts to ask people's opinions or get their advice, because you never know who might give you the advice that you've been waiting to hear, or that you needed to hear, that you're not going to read in a textbook and that you're not going to hear from a college professor. And sometimes it's so important to reach out to those people and to hear what they have to say, because it does really have an impact on the path that you go on, whether you become an entrepreneur or whether you decide to choose a career. It really does have an impact. And going to education, I thought I wanted to become a psychologist. I went into college with the mindset that I wanted to major in psychology, and that's what I wanted to do. And then I wanted to go to, I wanted to get my master's, and that was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a therapist. I love talking to people and I love listening to people. And I thought that was ultimately what I wanted to do in life. And that's what I started off as, you know, in college. And then once I started Adina's, I quickly started to shift into business and started to, you know, use the already, like the classes that I already had in psychology, and the fact that I already majored in psychology and couldn't really, you know, change and just gear it towards something else. I used that knowledge that I learned in psychology to help me in business, in retail, in all of that. And that actually helped me so much as well. And it gave me like so much of what I needed today with, you know, working with so many people, you know, hand in hand, and working so closely with so many different types of people, and having a team so large. You have to be able to communicate with so many different types of people that psychology ultimately taught me, you know, because I didn't learn that per se in school when I was young, you know, coming from like a small bubbled community. I didn't really learn that. And so college helped me see that and helped me learn that. And then on top of, you know, learning my passion and kind of like understanding that I loved to make jewelry and I loved to design jewelry, mixed with what I learned with psychology and then what I was then learning with business, helped me kind of just have this huge network of different studies that just helped me mesh everything together, and then ultimately, you know, create Adina's.
Can
Yeah.
you,
Oh, go ahead, Evie.
I want, you know, you said you studied psychology. How did you start Adina's? I want to hear how you started it, how you jumped from psychology to jewelry.
It's a very funny story. I remember it was in the summer. I was not sure what I wanted to do. I knew I was going back to college for my third semester. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I had finally gotten a good schedule. You know, every freshman goes in with the worst schedule possible. So I was just like, I really care right now about my schedule. I finally was able to make a good schedule. I had like 3 or 4 days free within the week. So I was only going in for 2 full days. And I figured, like, what can I do? I really didn't want to work for anyone. My parents worked for people their entire lives and constantly told me, you know, be an entrepreneur, have your own thing, sign your own check, be your own boss. And that always stuck with me. And I didn't want to go work for someone else and, you know, ultimately give my life to someone else. I wanted to, you know, be my own boss. And I was that kind of person where I was more of a leader. And I felt like that was who I was. I couldn't just, you know, sit and follow the rules. And I honestly loved jewelry always. It was something that always spoke out to me. I was overweight as a kid, and clothes didn't always fit me right. And while I used to see everyone looking good in different clothes and all of that, I used to feel so out of place. And jewelry was something that helped me feel better about myself. And I figured I wanted to make other girls feel better about themselves by wearing jewelry. And when I started to look for jewelry, to buy jewelry for myself, I really couldn't find affordable jewelry. I couldn't find pretty jewelry that would last and that would, you know, really make a statement. And that was when I decided I'm going to make some pieces just for myself. And people started seeing me wearing it, asked me where I got it from. And I told them that I made it myself. People didn't believe me. I was like, I swear, like I made it myself. And then people were like, honestly, like I would buy that. And I literally sold a necklace off my neck. And I was like, you know what, this could really be something. So I opened up an Instagram. This was like in August of 2015, I think. And I opened an Instagram page. I figured that would be the best way for me to market and brand the company, you know, what I was starting. And slowly but surely, I started gaining followers, and people really started to want to buy the jewelry, and I really couldn't believe it. And then I started expanding the designs and adding more and more pieces. And before I knew it, I had stock and inventory, and just it ended up being crazy. And then it just all kind of happened, you know? So that was really how I started. And then when I was in college, I had already, you know, declared my major, but I decided to then minor in business and start getting, you know, more of an idea of business, which I always had in me, but I wanted to get to know and like kind of study more like on the books kind of business, and not just like what I was born with, Syrian business. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know
what I love about what you're saying is it's like really tying into the theme of leveraging your talents, because you had the talent on the one hand of making jewelry, and that was something that was always a talent of yours. And like you said, you've always had a talent for speaking to people and being a leader. And now when you talk about your day-to-day, it really incorporates all of that. Like, you're using the psychology to understand people. Like you said, every single day is talking to people, working with people, managing the people below you, engaging with your client base. So all of that is really coming together to say, okay, you know, I could be good with people. I don't have to be a therapist. I could leverage that in a different way in my company. And Shelly sort of spoke about this before, where it's like you can gain skills from a job, and it doesn't necessarily have to be from school, or it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same exact way as you used it in the job before. But if you know what your talents are, you're really able to use that in ways that maybe you're outside of the box and you didn't think you would use them.
Yeah, for sure.
I think also Adina made a great point about your major in college, because I mean, it sounds like, Adina, you didn't go into college saying, you know, I want to start a jewelry business. You went for psychology first. And I think I oftentimes get questions from people around, you know, does my major matter? Or, you know, do I have to make a determination about the thing that I study in college based on what I want to do in life? And the answer is no, because nobody really knows going into college what it is that they want to do. And whatever it is that you do after college, you probably, you know, there's a good chance you won't be doing that for the next 10 or 20 or so years. So, you know, I think that's just an important point to make, especially for those of you who are in college. I studied urban studies, which is the study of cities. I did not become an urban planner, obviously, but the skills that I gained in researching and giving presentations and writing and figuring out how to make arguments around how to solve problems, those translated to consulting and even to my role today, where I do a lot of presentations and writing and research. So I don't think, you know, you need to make that determination going into college. And even if you study something that you never end up using practically, you'll figure it out informally, like Adina said. Like, you'll learn the skills that you need to learn outside of that formal education.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, we actually had a question from one of our listeners. Would you guys each be able to say maybe one class that you would recommend in college that really helped you in the job that you do now? I'll give you a second to think about it, but jump in when you're ready.
First of all, college feels like so long ago, even though it wasn't. I don't know. I'm like, what class did I take now?
Class.
I don't think there's one class for me that stands out. I think it was just like, even the experience for me, I mean, I have a liberal arts degree, but learning a bunch of different subjects and being in an environment where the people I was with were challenging me, and you know, just learning from them, I think helped a lot. And even when I was applying for consulting, I had to teach myself how to case study and how to interview for consulting on my own. That's not a class or a course I could have taken at Barnard. So I paired up with those people who were doing the same thing, and we taught ourselves. I like really stink at math. I cannot do math, and that's like everything for these case studies. So I guess my point is, like, I think ultimately, like, there's not one particular class. It's about the people and the environment that you surround yourself with, and the major that you think is helping you grow and helping you learn.
So I would say the best class that I took, one of my favorite classes that I took, and it doesn't really have to do with business or with psychology, was art history. And the reason that I loved it was because it really taught me how to view art, and how to like travel and understand art and the beauty of art. And so it helped me a lot because I do travel a lot for inspiration, and to kind of learn, you know, what the next trends are, and to kind of like understand what's going on right now in fashion and in the market, and to just get an idea of what I want my next designs to be, you know, for like the next seasons and all of that. And the truth is, it helped me a lot because it was very, very different from everything else I was taking. And like, yes, I was obligated to take that class. So at first it was annoying because like, who wants to take art history and, you know, learn about the pharaohs and how there's a difference if there was a crown on their head, if it was like burgundy or gold. But it did ultimately help me see, you know, things in a different way, and help me like kind of understand the beauty and the difference with colors and with different metals that I could have used. And it kind of really helped me see the world very differently. And it did help me a lot when it came to designing jewelry, you know, later on in the business. and it helped me really, you know, change the way that I see other countries and their art and their architecture and infrastructure and all of that. And it definitely was very helpful. So I would definitely say classes like that you're obligated to take sometimes end up being such a good breather from everything else you're taking, and sometimes really end up teaching you so much more than you'd expect. So that for me was a great class, and it ended up being so helpful because it ended up really working out so great for jewelry, even though I wasn't doing jewelry at the time.
So it sounds like that you guys just love like college experience, but you really took the secondary lessons from each class and applied it to what you're doing today, like networking and understanding art and understanding different countries and stuff like that. And it seems like that's how you, Adina, keep up on trends. But what I'm curious about is you're in a sourcing business, you're consistently looking for new materials, you're looking for new designs. How did you learn how to look for these materials? Because it's not easy communicating with international countries and stuff like that.
No, it's definitely not easy. I do speak 4 languages, so that does help.
What language?
I speak 4 languages, 4.5. I'm learning Italian now just because I do work a lot with Europe, and it does help if I know those. But I mean, learning those languages helped me a lot. I mean, I'm fluent in Spanish, Italian, English, Hebrew, and I understand Arabic. So that helps me very much when I work with Middle Eastern countries, and then when I work with Spanish or European countries, especially any Latin countries where, like, if it's European, I'll understand what they're saying more or less. And it helps me communicate with them. It is difficult for sure, and definitely the time difference is very hard, but there are shows and there are ways, you know, to go and see these people. That is why I do travel a lot. I go to Asia a lot. It is hard, but I mean, ultimately you have to do what you need to do for your company. You know, you want to source the best quality, especially when it comes to diamonds or to gold and all of that. You do want to offer the best to your clientele and to your customers, and that is what I do. So yes, it is hard, and I do have to travel, and it does take a toll, but ultimately, if it's going to result in the best product for me and for my brand, then I'm more than happy to do it, you know, because that is something that comes with the brand. And you know, you just have to sometimes venture out and try new things, and you live and you learn. Obviously, there have been times where I've gotten screwed over, or when I've gotten, you know, stolen from, or when things didn't go my way. But it is the price that you pay for trying new things and for working with different kinds of peoples from different places and from different countries and from different backgrounds. But you learn, and you learn who's trustworthy and who's not, and you build relationships, and that leads to other relationships, and that goes back to the networking. Once you start to network with one, they introduce you to a friend, and that friend introduces you to another friend, and that's just how it works. And one thing leads to another, and then until it's almost like a snowball effect. And if you use it to your benefit, and if you know how to use it, it ultimately will lead you to be successful.
But what I want to find out is, how did you, you know, you were doing your jewelry, you were making it, it was great, you were loving it, and now you all of a sudden have to go start getting mass amounts of materials. That initial process, that beginning process, how did you figure out how to do it?
So the first way that I started was I started doing research. I started to learn what countries, what states, what cities were worth, you know, getting involved with, you know, things like that. It's not easy to just go and find a company online. You do have to go and meet with them in person. Also, there are minimums. There's things that you have to, you know, there's like, you know, prerequisites that you kind of have to fulfill and things like that, and requirements. And so the first time that I went to an actual show, I went with the mindset to meet factories and to kind of expand my horizons and kind of meet these new people in the hopes that they would be the factories that I now produce my jewelry at. And that was where it started. And, you know, at every show, you're not going to always meet someone new, but you can solidify the relationships that you've made. And that's kind of the meeting ground to meet the people that you're in contact with, especially with the ones that are abroad. And so when I first went, that was how I met people, and that was how I started. And I met one person and he helped me, and from him it was to another person and another person, and that's how it was.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I wanted to segue a little bit to the leveraging your talents portion, because I know it was very clear with Edina, like you had this passion and this message that you wanted to send, but I think for a lot of people, they don't really have that passion. And so I maybe want to hear from Shelly, like, what do you find to be like your superpower, like your skill that really makes you successful in your job, and a little bit about how you found that superpower?
Good question. It's the ultimate question. I always really got nervous in a question on, like, during an interview when they asked the question, like, what are your strengths? And I actually, about, I guess, a year or so ago, when I first joined Flatiron, I took this Strengths Finder test, which I highly recommend. It's a Gallup test, Gallup. And basically, you know, everyone gets a good result. But it shows you from a list of, you know, tens of strengths what it is that you're good at. And the number one strength that I got on that test was learner, which basically means that I can work in a different environment, a dynamic environment where I need to learn really quickly and I might not be a subject matter expert, and I'm able to do that. And I think that's something that really resonates with me, because I get bored very easily. And so if I feel that I'm not, you know, in an environment where I'm constantly learning and challenged to do something new, then I won't have that passion. So it's almost like my passion is the process of learning, not actually, you know, a subject matter in and of itself. Another thing it told me was that I'm very disciplined, which was not a surprise to me because I am a very structured person. And that is helpful too, right? Because it means that I can, like, take problems or kind of sticky situations and put order to them. So I think ultimately, like, and I don't know if this answers your question, but you kind of discover your talents as you go. If you're not someone, you know, like Adina, who maybe knows, oh, I'm super passionate about jewelry, I'm super passionate about design, you know, you can kind of figure that out as you try different things. And if you'll notice, the skills that I mentioned are not like Shelly's good at marketing and like Shelly's superpower is PowerPoint, because it's about what skills are translatable. You can always learn the hard skills. It's the soft skills that you really need to be self-aware on, and really figure out how you want to utilize those. And so I think it's not about saying, you know, what do I want to be when I grow up? It's about saying, you know, what am I good at? And that will help you find the passion or the job as you go along.
You touched on the word self-aware. And I think that's a very important note to really highlight, because a lot of people aren't so self-aware and they think they're good at something or they think they're bad at something, and they just disregard or regard certain things. I wanted to find out, maybe, you know, you could share with the audience, what are some tips that you have or things that you do for yourself to really, you know, be self-aware and make sure you're present and not doing things that maybe you shouldn't be doing? Or
yeah, it's a really good question and very important. I think other than taking, you know, tests like I mentioned, the most important thing is to talk to the people that are working with you and that know you really well. So I meet with my manager every month, and I have it's a development conversation. So it's not about, you know, this project or this deadline. It's really about, what is it that you think I'm doing well? What can I improve on? What criticism do you have for me? And even if you're not in a role, or maybe a role where you have a manager or you're in college, you can do the same thing with your professors, right? And I really would advise that you get that feedback in a very timely way. So if you work on a presentation or project for school or for something for work, ask in that moment after you give that presentation, you know, how did I do? What criticism do you have? That's the best way for people to give you real feedback and for you to actually internalize it. And that's, you know, I think the best way to really become self-aware. You can even ask your friends who know you very well, hey, you know, I have an interview, they're asking me what my strengths are, like, what do you think I'm good at? Like, what's something that you say, you know, Shelly is great at this? Because chances are they might know, you know, even better than you do. And so it's just about making, I think, that a priority. And doing it very regularly. So if you're going into a job that's new, check in with yourself every month. Like, don't wait until you're waiting to get promoted or you feel like your job's not, satisfying you. Be really self-aware with those support resources as you go.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you pointed out also asking for constructive criticism. I think a lot of times people fear being told what they don't do well, but it's such a great way to learn about like where you can improve. But then also asking like, what are my strengths? What are the things that I'm good at, whether it be a boss or professor or friends? I think it's definitely great advice. Adina, do you have any thoughts on, it seems like you are very self-aware, you know what you're good at, what your strengths are. So how did you figure those things out, and what advice do you have for our audience about that?
So the truth is, I wasn't always so self-aware, and it's not like today I'm very confident in who I am and what I do, but it wasn't always like that. And I'm sure it's not like that for everyone. And I'm not going to just come up here and say, I knew that I wanted to do this and I knew that I was going to become successful. And because that would be like, a big lie, because that's not how it is. Everything is scary, and, every change is scary. And what I would say, I personally sought out the advice of others, like I mentioned before, and I think that's the most important thing to do always. And like Shelly, like you said, the best thing is to ask your friends. Sometimes if you are surrounded by good friends, I think sometimes the best thing to do is ask your friends, ask your peers. You can even ask your parents, as long as you can trust them and you feel like they're going to give you honest advice. It's such a good thing to do. And I think more often than not, we all know deep down who we are and what we want to do and what our passions are. We just may be afraid to express them, and we may be afraid to go after them because maybe our passions doesn't necessarily resonate well with everyone else, or doesn't resonate with what the guidelines of this community is for that certain gender. But I think that if you believe in yourself and if you're confident enough to go chase those passions and chase your dreams, then I think you're invincible and you're unstoppable. And I think when I first started Edina's, there were so many people who told me, like, there's no way you can do this. There's no shot. I call that you're going to do this for 6 months and you're going to get bored of it and you're going to stop doing it. And I mean, yeah, part of me fought for it because of those people who tried to put me down. But the other part of me also wanted to do it because it was something that I had felt I wanted to do my entire life. And after being someone that was always an underdog, I just couldn't wait to show the world who I really am. And I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't have my past and if I didn't go through what I went through. So I always knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't always have the confidence to do it. So I think a lot of that also has to do with just kind of going after it and just taking that step and entering the unknown and going after your dreams. And if you do it and if you decide to, take that step, I think after that, everything else is history. And you kind of you make this pathway for yourself where you're unstoppable.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Adina. Like she said, you have to own that and you have to surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you, right? Like, it sounds like for you, Adina, like there were some negative voices and you still pursued your passion, because when you find the thing that you're really good at, you're not going to want to let people, get in your way or stop you. So it's important that you surround yourself with people who are going to actually encourage you to pursue that and work on the accomplishments that you want to achieve.
People always say to surround yourself with friends that are smarter than you. So to always,
I would agree with that. And who bring you up though.
Exactly.
Right. Who lift you up, who ultimately lift you up instead of bring you down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think we also have to be a little bit careful with this word passion, because I think people always like see it in this one way where it's like sort of this Edina type of passion where, okay, I'm good at jewelry and that's my passion. I'm going to take it and turn it into a business. But I also want to call attention to what Shelly said, which is your passion can be something that's not like art or baking or something that's like really concrete. It could be just like you said, being a learner or being good at like just strategizing or thinking about things in a specific way. So the word passion is a little bit scary for some people who are hearing something like, but I don't have a passion. So like, how am I supposed to know what I should be doing? But passion looks different for everybody. And it could just be something that makes you excited. It doesn't necessarily have to be something so tangible.
Right.
But for you, Adina, when
Yeah.
did you decide to take that passion and say like, okay, I can really monetize this? Like, this is not just a hobby.
So again, jewelry it was something like a passion of mine. Doing jewelry was just something I was good at. And then I took my passion and my love for jewelry and then being good at jewelry, and that's when I kind of meshed it together, and that's how I monetized it. And that's when I decided, okay, let me make jewelry and let me sell jewelry. So that's what it was. You get what I mean? So yeah, people get scared of the word like passion, because not necessarily everyone is so obsessed with what they do and doesn't love it as much. But sometimes being really good at something and then making it your own, that's what kind of makes it into a passion. And I think that's what happened with me. I loved jewelry and I loved making jewelry. And then when I made it my own and I made it mine and I made those designs, like it was my creativity, it was my designs, my pieces, that's what made me love it even more. Like now when I see, you know, Ariana Grande or Kendall Jenner wearing my jewelry, I'm like, that's my piece. Like that's my jewelry. That's my design. That's what even like ignites the passion even more and just makes me so excited to create even more pieces and to, you know, start an entirely new collection and bring in new pieces. So that's what, you know, helps build on the passion, because of course there are times where you just get stuck and you're not sure where to move from here. So, you know, it's always like you got to just build on it. And going back to what you asked on monetizing, once I started to make the jewelry and, you know, opened the Instagram and started selling the pieces and just showing it off in a way that you kind of like had to buy it. That was my thing from day one, showing the jewelry, not just one necklace, but like, you know, 3 necklaces at a time, 4 necklaces at a time. I mean, today when we model the necklaces or the jewelry, it's like 6, 7 necklaces at a time. And like people buy the entire look as it is, because that's how, you know, people like to wear jewelry, you know? And that was pretty much how I monetized it, and took just making jewelry in my kitchen or in my basement to a real-time company.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned this before and we sort of glossed over it, but you were saying something about how, especially given your gender, people didn't expect you to do something like this. And that was sort of where like some of the not so enthusiastic voices came from. So I guess what is the biggest challenge for you being a woman in business?
The biggest challenge I would say is definitely, you know, the lack of respect that I get from some people, whether it be, you know, people who, you know, were just coming on to the team, or people who didn't really expect to see me as a real boss, or people who weren't really sure that I knew what I was doing. I think many times people were unsure of my capabilities. I think that's the better way to phrase it. I think people many times didn't think that I was capable of running a business or of managing over people or delegating, and sometimes even taking matters into my own hands and doing what needed to be done. I think that for sure. And I think, you know, like just people didn't really think I was going to succeed. And I think that when a man or a guy starts a business, everyone's just like, oh, yeah. But like when I started, it was like, oh, are you sure? Like, do you think you can do it? I don't think so. You know, like you're a girl. And I was like, just sit down and watch me, because I'm going to do it, you know? And that's just what happened. But I mean, I think people didn't really think that I'd be as successful as I am. And most people were kind of waiting for me to fail. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I felt like I faced. But I mean, now it's different. But back then, I think definitely that's what it was.
No, good. I'm happy you proved them wrong, because I think it's so nice for people to have like a figure that they can look to and say, people didn't believe in her, but she was able to do it. Mm-hmm. And I actually remember you saying a few days ago when we were prepping for this, that there were times where your employees weren't trusting you and you knew that you had to like tell Meyer, your brother, okay, you should talk to them, and they'll listen to him more than you, which is like such a shame, because you started this business with your own 2 hands. You would think, I mean, it's Adina's Jewels and you are Edina. So if that's not going to get somebody to respect you, I don't know what is.
Yeah. So yeah, there were definitely times where, I would go to Meyer, my brother, who's the CEO of the company, and tell him, I need you to speak to them. I need you to explain this, because it seems like they're not getting the message from me. They're not understanding it, and he would come and he would say it, and it was like, yes, sir, no problem. And it was just, you could tell and you could see that there was a very big difference in the way that they listened to what he was saying, and as opposed to, to what I was saying. Even if we were saying the exact same thing, same words, we could have both read it off a script and they would take it like it was like two different people. But I mean, it's unfortunately, that is just, it's going to take time, and it's just something that I've come to like grow and understand. And it is what it is. But I mean, thankfully, there are people on my team who appreciate me so much. And as they've come to know me and to, grow with us as a team and become more a part of the Adina's fam, they've kind of realized that, I am the woman, and I am a woman boss, and, I do know what I'm saying, and, it makes sense. So
you don't get to where you are by not knowing what you're saying.
Right. So they kind of they picked up on it.
And I want to hear from Shelly how you feel about being a woman in business, and I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Or I do want to commend Edina, because I also think, one of the challenges that, some women face, I don't want to generalize, is owning up to your strengths and your talents and being able to say, I have the confidence in myself to do something despite some, negativity. And oftentimes people might perceive that as, bragging, in the case of a woman. So I just want to commend Adina on that. And, it's unfortunate that you face that negative pressure, but I think it sounds like you're surrounding yourself with the right team that respects you and respects, women and your leadership. In terms of a challenge that I face, this is real talk, right, Caroll? So I can
get real with us.
No, I think for me, one of the challenges that I face as a woman in business is feeling like I have to maybe accelerate my career or plan out my career in a different way than a man would. And I think it's something that a lot of women that I hear from also face, because especially when you have, plans for a family on the horizon, you're thinking about your career and operating in a little bit of a different way than a man would. And, it's hard to overcome that, right? Because it can be a big burden to think about when you're trying to think about, every move that you're making or every promotion that is coming up. And what I've learned is that, that's just too much to put on yourself. I think I've taken, my career as a step-by-step, day-by-day, year-by-year process, and that would be my recommendation. When I went into consulting, a lot of people said to me, you're going to travel, you're crazy, do you want to live that lifestyle? I was never planning on living that lifestyle for my whole life. It was a, short-term career decision that I knew would open doors for me. And I think, not putting that pressure on yourself as a woman to say, oh, well, how am I going to manage, all of these things when you're young and when you're just starting your career is just, not something that you want to put on yourself. And the other thing I'll say is that I think the environment you work in as a woman is so key. In, some corporate companies, you don't see a lot of women leaders. And I think that says a lot about the company culture. In some executive meetings that I was in my previous role, there were one or two women in a sea of many men. And in the company that I'm at now, there are so many women leaders. There's a mother's room on every floor of our office. I don't feel the same kind of, being the only woman in the room. I never feel that way. And that allows me to be myself and not face the challenges that some, women face in some other environments. And I think the same goes for your personal life, right? Like I said before, the buck doesn't stop at work. If you don't surround yourself with relationships and people in your personal life who are going to encourage you as a woman, whether that be men or women in your life, then, you might put those limitations on yourself. So I think, I've been very lucky to have a support network and, group of people that have encouraged me. And so I feel like even though I face those pressures, whether that be in the community, in the world, or my own pressures that I put on myself, I'm able to kind of pursue my passions and pursue the things that I want in business.
Great.
So I guess you keep talking about like differences in your different jobs based on being an entrepreneur and being somebody in a career. So like even with the women thing, like when you're the boss, you don't have the choice of like going to a company culture and finding one that fits what you want versus, and like even Edina was saying in the beginning, her day doesn't ever end. She's sometimes up until late hours of the night speaking overseas to people. So I kind of wanted to get from you guys, and the good thing is our viewership is really half and half in terms of people who are looking towards careers and people who are looking to be entrepreneurs. So what would you say are some of the risks and rewards of being in your specific field? So for Shelly, I guess it would be like, what are the risks and rewards of being a career professional as opposed to an entrepreneur in your eyes?
Do you want me to take that?
Mm-hmm. And then we'll throw it to Edina next.
Okay, sure. So I actually always had this like thought in the back of my head that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But like I said, I am very disciplined. So I think, when I left college, I really craved formality. So I was, not the type of person that was just going to take, a leap. I didn't have that kind of in me. And I think it's all about, like I said, like figuring out what your personality type is like, what, you're looking to get out of a career. For me, when I left college, I wanted kind of like a formal business education almost, and I felt like I would get that at a large company. I wanted to build my network. I wanted to build my resume. I think, the pros of working working for someone else is, like Adina said, she works really late hours and she has to think about, that this is her life. And because she's passionate about it, she's able to do that. But for some people, like, they don't want to do that. They want to work, set hours. They want to know they can take a sick day, or, know that they, have job security in a sense, like they're not accountable for their paycheck. So I think you have to kind of figure out what works for you and what your risk tolerance is. And, the kind of downsides of working in a position like mine is I'm not going to be a, boss lady like Adina in, very quick amount of time. It takes time. There's a hierarchy. I have to wait my turn. And sometimes that's frustrating. So I think you, in my opinion, you have to see, who you are, what you want to get out of your career, what you're comfortable with. I, coming out of college was not comfortable with working at a small company. That was something I was afraid of. And just see, what makes sense for you, especially also your stage in life, right? Like if you need a steady income and you can't afford to take that risk, you need to, assess that. I don't know if you would agree with that, Adina.
No, for sure. Actually, so when I kind of decided that I wanted to do Adina's and that I wanted, to be an entrepreneur, I did want to do it because, again, like I said, I wanted to kind of be my own boss and be in charge of my own day, and just kind of have that control over what I was doing. But I also think that there is a risk, like Shelly, like you said, there is a risk, and it's scary at times, when you make a lot of the big decisions and there's a lot of things that fall on my lap, and I have to kind of, it's like I can't blame it on someone else, so like I can't say that mistake was not made by me if it was made by me, because it's just me, and so like I always have to kind of be present, and nothing could just be done, like it can't just be done without thought. Everything is kind of calculated, and takes, a lot of thought and care, and it definitely does take a toll, and a lot of things are very stressful, but I mean, people who know me know that like I don't really get stressed, like I mean, Shelly, you know me, like I don't get stressed. I'm not a stressful person, but there are times and there are days where I just do have to separate myself and like kind of think, what do I want to do here? This is a very big deal. With so many things that are involved in the business, because there's a lot of beautiful things that come with being an entrepreneur, but then there's a lot of ugly things that come with it. And being the face of the brand anything that the brand would do, or, you know, anything that, you know, the brand would be blamed for would kind of fall on me, because I'm Adina and it's called Adina's Jewels. You know, it's not like a random brand that has no face and that just has a board of, you know, investors. This is, you know, like a family run business, and this is something that, you know, it ultimately has my name on it, and it's something that, like, you know, is just all me. But then the rewards is like when I see myself in a magazine, or I see my jewelry, you know, all over the world, I'm like, that's me. Like, that's me. I'm Adina. That's me. It's my jewelry. Like, I did that, you know? And so there's definitely the risk and the reward. Thankfully to me, the reward sometimes is so much bigger, and it's because I make it bigger, and I focus more on that. But like, you know, it's hard. Like I said, you know, sometimes I don't have a life. Sometimes I feel like this is all I'm doing. And this is, you know, I've given my life to the business, and I've sacrificed a lot for it. I've sacrificed a lot of my adulthood, like, you know, my adulthood, young type of life for it. But I did it because I loved it, and I wanted to do this for me, for my future, and for, you know, for my family. And I think that when I look back on it, if I look back on it and I'm happy that this is what I did, then to me the risk is minimal and the reward is so much greater. And I mean, I'm happy with my decision, and I'm so happy with where I am right now. So I love it.
The both types of career paths have very different risk versus rewards.
Yeah.
In my eyes, it seems like your risks, Dina, would be more like that nothing stops at the door, where Shelly, in your type of position, things could stop at the door and you have some more free time at home with that, whatever free time you have, because I'm sure you're very, very busy. But
no, I would say, like, yes, like, even though you might be working for a company where you're still working late hours and, you know, those types of things, to what Adina said earlier, you're not responsible for the entire company, right? Like, if I mess something up, it would be really bad, but it's not my company. So that, you know, has its pros and cons, right? Like, Adina's monetary upside is way higher because it's her company. But I don't necessarily need to worry about that level of accountability.
So, you know, you guys both came a very long way. You guys are both in great positions right now. And what I'm curious to hear is what you, in your eyes, think is your biggest mistake to date, and how did you learn from that mistake and leverage it to propel your career further than it was before? And I guess, Shelly, you could start us off with that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
This is a tough question. My biggest mistake.
If you want, Adina could start us off.
I don't know. Adina, do you have something in mind?
I mean, I can't really pinpoint it to one, like, really big mistake, like, whoa, that was a big mistake. But the only thing that I can say that, you know, I've changed over the course of time and that I've learned to do better is probably, you know, the people that I hire and the team that I have chosen to surround myself with and build. There's been people that, you know, we've hired who didn't help us, you know, with what we needed, and who didn't help, you know, excel the company, and who really only just held us back and made things harder. And it took me time to learn that as a boss, I shouldn't be doing everything. I need to delegate. That was probably my hardest thing, was that at first I was so in control of everything because it was just me. It was just me. And then at one point it was just me and Meyer. So we were doing everything from the packaging to the rebagging to the, you know, the shipping, the picking, the, you name it, the customer service. I used to answer the call. Hi, this is Sarah. How can I help you? I mean, I used to do it all. I used to answer every email. I used to know everything that was going on in the company. And then to give that up and to let other people do that and just kind of, you know, give it up and relinquish it to them was very hard. And at first, you know, we couldn't really hire the best of people. And it kind of taught me sometimes that in order to build a great company, it is the people that stand behind the boss and, you know, the executives. It is the team. It is the team. And Shelly, I wish I could have someone, there are 100 of you that I can have on my team, because it is ultimately the team that makes the company and helps grow the company and helps, keep the customers happy and helps just keep the ball rolling and everything moving fluidly. And I think that the biggest mistake that Maya and I both learned was that you can't just hire every person that walks into the door or every interviewee. You have to literally first, really see who you want and the kind of culture that you want your brand to stand for, and then build off of that, and then, hire according to that. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that we learned.
Shelly, did you?
No, I don't think there's like one thing that stands out in my mind. This is not a cop-out answer, but I think one of like the mistakes that I make, or the faults that I have, is actually harping on my mistakes. I think anytime something doesn't go the way that I had hoped for it to go in work, or even if I prematurely send an email to an executive that I didn't really think enough about, or something like that, I'll harp on it, and that's oftentimes just not healthy and not good. So I think for me, something that I need to work on and improve on is recognizing that you're not perfect. Like Adina said, right? She realized that they were taking on too many things, and they were that wasn't good for them. So I think realizing that your mistakes, again, like you said, you learn from. It's not something you need to harp on, and it won't affect your entire career or your promotion if you don't get something right the first time. Then you'll just be a happier person. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Right. And Shelly, actually something that we tell all of our people here and our entire team, something that Mara and I always tell them, is that it's normal to make mistakes, and you are going to make mistakes because it's a very rigorous, fast-paced job. But we always tell them, don't harp on your mistakes and don't get stuck on that mistake, because it's going to happen, and it's going to happen more often than once or twice. And it's just about learning from your mistakes and moving on from it, and being honest about it. Adina, I made this mistake. What should we do? Can you help me? And I'll never scream at an employee. I'll never make them feel uncomfortable, because I know that they'll never be honest with me after, and I don't want that. And so we'll always figure out a solution and find out a way how to fix it. But it's so common for employees to make a mistake, and it's like if they don't make a mistake, then they're doing something wrong, because mistakes kind of should happen, and then it also helps us learn how we can fix our process and how we can kind of better our system and our back end. And so I always say that mistakes are going to happen. It's just how you move on from those mistakes, and then kind of better yourself for the future. And I think so 100%, it's totally normal. And as a boss, I can tell you it is hard sometimes to see mistakes, but ultimately it's those mistakes that help us, help Maya and I perfect our system. And it's a thing of life. So, there's no way around it.
Yeah. And not being overly critical about yourself too, because sometimes I'll walk out of a training and think that I did something wrong, or, criticize myself. And then when I ask for that feedback, they're like, no, it's fine. It went fine. So, not thinking that you make mistakes when you don't. That's another lesson.
Right.
For sure. So you guys gave us tons and tons of great information here. I loved hearing about what both of you do, how you got there, how you grew your careers. And you guys gave us actually tons of concrete tips of what we can do, whether it be doing a strength finder or networking, asking people for advice. But could you just end us off with one concrete thing that our viewers should do tonight, tomorrow, in order to figure out what their talents are or to leverage their talents? Who wants to be put on the spot?
You want to go first? Or? Should I go first? Okay, I'll go first. I always used to do this, and for me, this helped me. I used to make a list of pros and cons, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. And you have to accept what you're good at and what you're bad at. So I know that there are things that I can't do, and there are things that I can do. And when I know what I can do, I leverage those talents. That's exactly what leveraging is. I leverage what I am good at. I take those pros and I leverage it to the best of my ability, to the maximum potential, to get the most out of it. And whatever I am not good at, that is when I sought Meyer's help. Meyer, I need your help with branding, marketing, taking the business online, because that's something that I cannot do. And I'm not even going to bother because I know that I can't do that and it's going to be an epic fail. And there's other things where I seek the advice of my employees. I need their help to do this because I know that that is something that I cannot do. So I think the most important, like a very awesome tip, right now, take a pen and paper, write down pros and cons. And then after that, just kind of, I think, sit with yourself and know who you are and know what you want to gain out of life. Do you want to work for someone? Do you want to have a career path? Or do you think that you want to be an entrepreneur? It kind of depends. Do you want to be someone who leads, and do you feel more confident and more comfortable in being a leader and in having people under you and in taking that risk and not being afraid to fail? Or do you want to go on a career path? And you can still be very, very successful on a career path. I would never deny that or negate that. But which path is better for you? You have to decide that. And I think the best way to figure that out is, there are books to read. There are many, I've done that. I've read books and I've watched I've watched movies and shows and things to kind of help me learn and grow and understand what I want. And I think sometimes before you just jump into the whole work life, you need to know who you are first. And that's why there's a whole process of elementary school and then high school and then college, because you have to learn and grow and just kind of blossom into a person first, and then you can work, and then you can become, build a life and start a family and do all of that. And I think if people right now don't know what they want to do, then they should, sit themselves down or, sit with someone, get the proper advice, decide what they want to do and really contemplate about it. And then once they know what they want to do, if they're confident enough to go after it and do it, then, don't let anyone hold you back. Surround yourself with people who love you and who are going to encourage you. I mean, DM me, text me, call me, whatever you want. I'm here for you. I'll support you. Get supporters and, go after your dreams, do what you want. Because ultimately the only person who can stop you from doing what you want is yourself. So go after it, do you, be you, and, fake it till you make it. I did that and it worked for me. So if you do that, I think it'll work for you too.
I love those sentiments. You give us such great things. And I'll just add one caveat to the pros and cons list, which I love. I think it's a great tip. This is what I do with my clients all the time. And we sit there and we talk about their strengths and we write them out, but don't stop at one of my pros is I'm a good baker, right? So one of the things is people might just think, oh, I'm a good baker, let me start a baking business. But delve deeper into those strengths. So what is it about you that makes you a good baker? I've spoken to tons of people, and one of them would say, oh, I'm a great baker because I'm super creative and I'm visual. And other people will say, I'm a great baker because I can follow instructions really well. So if you give me the exact details of exactly what I have to do, then I'll do it. And you can see how those people are extremely, extremely different. So don't stop at just those superficial things that you're good at. Delve deeper into it. And that's where that passion or superpower will come from. Sometimes it's not going to hit you in the face like it did maybe with Edina, even though it wasn't something that hit her straight in the face, but you can get there just by, thinking and spending time with yourself.
Yeah.
All right, Shelly.
I would also add to that if you're not someone that has that self-awareness just yet, don't panic. I think you should just try as many experiences as you can and learn from it and make sure that you're not in roles that are making you unhappy. And really that kind of strengths finding and learning will come along the way. I interned in real estate and the nonprofit space in a law firm. I worked across the gamut of very different things. My resume looked like a complete glob of different things, so that I can learn, what it is from those experiences that I liked or disliked. So I wouldn't think that if you're a person that is sitting down to write down what you're good at and what you're not good at, and you really don't know, that you should, panic or say that, you need to figure that out right away. Just try what experiences come on your plate, and you'll learn through that process. And then the second thing I would say in terms of just taking a practical next step, make a list of 10 people who you feel that you want to talk to for self-discovery, whether that be just generally asking them, like we said earlier, what it is that you're good at or what advice they have, or just learning about their job, right? Like if you don't know what you want to do at this point, at this juncture, make a list of people that are in a bunch of different roles that sound interesting to you and ask them, like Caroll and Evie asked us, what's your day-to-day like? How did you discover, your current role? And that will help you figure out what's out there and what might spike your interest.
Also, shameless plug. I know that this is a very important tip. I know that it's so important to hear what people do day to day. I started a podcast. It's called What the Heck Do You Do? It's literally that, interviewing people on what their day to day is. New episodes every Monday. We had like so many awesome guests. So if you're not sure the career that you want to go on and you kind of want to hear what people do day to day, check it out. It's been awesome.
Yes, definitely.
So, Caroll, last time you put me on the spot of something to do.
Shoot.
So I want to ask you, what is something that you should do tonight to understand yourself better and get into business?
See, and you told me you were going to do this and I forgot. I didn't come prepared with anything. Okay. What is one thing that you can do? You touched on so many good ones.
And I'm happy you didn't ask me because Shelly took my main one and my backup. So I don't.
I mean, I'm gonna say, check out the What the Heck Do You Do podcast, and really you'll get a good understanding of. And I think it's like doing things like this, hearing people speak about their jobs. You realize that it's not as black and white as you think, and you realize that you don't necessarily need a certain degree to get a certain job, or you don't necessarily need a certain skill set to be a certain career path. And then I think once you like hear about different jobs and what they are, then you can sort of use these other two great tips, which is like learning more about yourself, asking, like, so either on your own, like Adina said, or by asking other people for what those tips are. So,
and do that continually, because it's not the case that people are in the same jobs for, 20 or so years now. You'll switch your job probably many times, especially if you're not, owning your own business. So constantly remember to have those conversations.
That was great. So I wanted to thank you guys for coming on to this interview. It means a lot to us and our viewers. To get even an hour of your time is worth a lot of money. So, it's free to everybody. So they should definitely really understand and pay attention to what you guys said. Some of the most amazing themes that came out were, understand your surroundings, which is, it starts with that. If you have good surroundings, everything else could maybe fall into place. Becoming self-aware, understand who you are, what you're good at, what you're bad at, and really using what you're good at to become better in business, better in your personal life, better in your home life, whatever it is. And then thirdly, don't harp on your mistakes. Mistakes are going to be made. Mistakes are happening every single day. And when you're growing and becoming bigger and bigger, mistakes are always going to be made. So thank you for really pointing out those themes and, putting yourselves out there and telling us like it's okay to make mistakes and do those things. I wanted to thank SBH Young Professionals Career Division. They are an amazing division of SBH where you could call them up. I want to start my career up, and they will help you write your resume, put you in a career path. We had Exceed sponsor this event, so they are more on the entrepreneurship side. If you're if you want to start your business or think of a business idea like Adina's Jewels that you want to get into, they have a great board of people that are in all facets of business and can really give you everything you need from A to Z on, what you need to do to get started up and running and really propel you to the next level. And we wanted to thank UJA for jumping onto this episode and helping us get the word out there to help people all around the Jewish community in business. So thanks to everybody involved, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one, which is going to talk about branding yourself, branding your business, which is just, I feel like, a continuation of this kind of interview. So look forward to that, and we will get back to you with a date. So
Guys, it was awesome.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Good night, everybody.